Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of First Gen Failures, episode 13. Welcome. So, we talk a lot about how people inside of America view America, whether they're incredibly patriotic and whether they're highly critical of it and think that the whole system needs a reboot. But today, we really just want to talk about how other countries view America. How do the people beyond our borders, how does the international community view us? Because I don't know, for me, it's a really interesting topic. For many Americans, I feel like America's very isolated, like a very isolated world. We feel like this is it, like these are the borders, those other far off countries are really far away. But, today we want to talk about how other countries view America.
For this argument, we see two main sides. One of them being American exceptionalism, the view that America is above all other countries because we came from our own roots and we worked really hard to get here. And the other view being highly critical, as we'll see many other countries take the stance of. So going to the first side of this story, I guess, we have American exceptionalism. Many less developed countries where there's opportunities really scarce, maybe there's like high poverty rates, there's less work, they see America as the end game, the utter dream, or the land of freedom. Even people in America see it all the time. We call it the American dream: being rich, having many cars, having a big house, having freedom, being your own boss. These are things that everyone sees America or Americans do.
Right. And it's not uncommon, right? Like we've seen it in history. When we had all those European immigrants coming in, especially from Southern Europe or Eastern Europe, they held the same idea. They saw their ticket to America as their ticket to true freedom. And I get that. That makes sense. In my culture, especially, contrary to popular belief, Iranians see America in this kind of light. Iranians themselves really like America. Iranians do not represent what their government says. They really see America in this kind of light. Back home, people flock to my family when we visit to see like living evidence of someone that's in America. America's seen as this capitalist icon. And even to this day, my family is very hesitant to call out America on its BS. Like they believe that they truly owe America everything that they have and are very avid believers in its capitalist system. You work hard, you get the cash. It's very straightforward to them. And for the majority of Iranians, this is the viewpoint. Like, sure, America is like seen as the shining beacon of light, like the perfect example of what freedom and democracy looks like. Trisha, do you have like a similar experience in that?
The problems I have in America, these are like secondary problems compared to the first world problems they have in personally, like in India. Like there's not even enough housing for everyone. People die because of basic diseases every day. There's not enough food. There's never clean water in India. So for them, they disregard the problems that we see with America because they see it in a better light, because they're like, well, you guys all have houses. Your government pays for your food if you don't have it. You guys get like medical stuff taken care of. Like in India, you don't get treated unless you have the money. When visiting India, people would always treat us like royalty because they're like, oh my God, foreigners, like, wow, like you guys are from the foreign land. And then I'd be like, it's just America. But for them, it was just a huge deal. They thought of us as one of the richest countries and like probably assumed my house is like made out of gold or something. I mean, everyone expects like our family to get iPhones for them when they come back, not knowing that like it's not everyone here is rich like that. I'm not allowed to speak English in public places either, or honestly Hindi, because I have such a thick American accent. And my mom says that if you speak and people get like passerbys get an idea of like you're not from here, they would either like raise prices on stuff or even they try to kidnap you just for money.
Right. That kind of viewpoint is kind of common around places that are less developed than America, obviously. And I completely understand this viewpoint. When it's difficult for you to get food and water every day, I don't think anybody really cares about how flawed the capitalist system is or whatever, because they want to eat food.
That's basic.
Yeah, like when you talk about like what was it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have those basic needs, any other upper level quote unquote problems don't mean anything to you. And I feel like for a lot of our families, this really resonates with them. Like they've been through the hardship. Whatever issues America has feels like a ball game to them. Like, it's just barely anything, right? So for the both of us, we've talked, we know that our families revere people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates for their ingenuity. They love stories of these kinds of people who built like an empire from the ground up because of the freedom that America brought and just the quote unquote equal opportunity across the landscape. They don't really realize the amount of manpower that has gone into these people's fortunes and not necessarily by them, for example. In general, the view is very idealistic of America, believing that it has no flaws, has completely solved racism, and is the ideal nation, which, that viewpoint can sometimes get a little credit knowing what a lot of these immigrants or foreigners have felt, like our families.
Oh, I totally agree. And like when I talk politics with them, they're not conservative in the traditional sense, but a lot of like I know that you and me both talked about this. Our parents are economically conservative people. They love the capitalist system because they think it's fair. And I'll say, "Hey, like I think we should eat the rich." And they're like, "Why? That makes no sense. They've worked hard to get where they are." And I'm like, "Well, I don't think about it that way." But they're so in love with the fact that like you work hard and you'll get where you need to be that they don't see it as a bad thing.
Right. They don't see the desolation that comes with the process and like the underpaid workers overseas that they don't have to see
Yeah.
as CEOs and stuff like that. I get that. So that was the whole idea of American exceptionalism that a lot of foreign parents and foreign families have of America, especially when they come from places with less opportunities, such as our countries. But I want to talk about the different side of things. Just like how we talked about a little bit earlier, America really prides itself as being number one in pretty much every sense, even though almost all the time. That's kind of based on false identity and kind of like just falsehoods, pretty much. A lot of the developed world clowns America on a regular basis, and that's just the truth. We have scoured Reddit pages, Quora pages, watched a ton of videos about how like foreigners view America, and we've compiled a little list of just a couple of the grievances, so to speak, that these people from other developed countries have towards America and like what parts of our system are crazy to them. People whose, level of development, their democracy index, so to speak, is like on a similar level. So, Trisha, how are we getting clowned right now?
So the number one biggest thing that people have to say about America is definitely the healthcare. And when we were doing research, we found out that you have to pay to hold your baby that you just birthed. And I think that's so crazy. It's like $40 just to hold your baby, and that's not even covering actual delivery costs. It's just to hold your baby. Hospitals oftentimes don't even give you an accurate bill of what you're going to pay until a procedure is over. Oftentimes, you hear people saying, ask doctors for itemized receipts instead of actual receipts because that way you can see every single thing you had to pay for. And
Hmm.
oftentimes, when you do that, you learn that the costs are a lot less and that we don't know where this extra $200-$300 came from because when you ask for itemized receipts, you see exactly what you had to pay for.
Yeah, this is just like a backdrop or just some specifics to like the crazy issues of just healthcare law and like just healthcare in general in America and like how it's kind of subpar knowing how like rich we are as a nation or like how much economic power or manpower even or just global power we have. Our healthcare is like trash. The price of insulin in America is a great example of this. It's upwards of like $100 per month. There are people in America right now, many people that are rationing their insulin in this country because they just simply cannot afford it. This is a big thing that I feel like we're going to keep coming back to. America as a nation, because of its very capitalistic ideals and history, is very swayed by the pharmaceutical industry and other massive industries that just have a big role in like American economies. So you'll see things like this, how healthcare is very subpar because of the crazy prices of drugs and like just the sheer amount of opiates that pharmaceutical industries have put into America and stuff like that. Just the healthcare here is kind of a mess. And I feel like other developed countries certainly do see that. It's embarrassing.
Consider the population of diabetic people in America. Especially because of the high consumer rates and obesity rates, there's going to be a good bit of American citizens and just population in America that is diabetic. And to think that insulin, which a good chunk of our population is going to need is upwards of $100 per month. Like, that's insane. It's not even like insulin is just something a few people here and there use. Like, there's a good population in America that does use it. So considering that we don't take that into account is really embarrassing.
Yeah. Another big thing that I have seen come up again and again are obviously gun laws. We are currently a joke to the country of New Zealand. The Christchurch shooting in New Zealand killed the same percentage of Kiwis or New Zealanders as 9/11 did for America. And they shut that down immediately. Many countries view America's relentless protection of these gun rights as a joke because, honestly, like, getting political here, but I don't really believe that the right of someone else to bear arms is the same as my right to live or just anyone's right to live, really. And I get the whole like historical narrative where we had it so long ago, but you know what else we had long ago? Slavery. I don't think that's good enough of a reason to keep something around. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, to a lot of these other countries, they don't have as many of these shootings as we do. And I get the argument too that like it doesn't actually take that many lives, but it's still lives, It's just it's a good amount. And it's a kind of a monstrous way to die, so how about we don't do that? Like how quickly their response was to that issue, and I understand too that they are a much smaller country. I think it's much easier to get legislation passed in those nations too, but it's just personally I think it's unacceptable. But that is something that gets brought up in conversation a lot is just America's crazy gun laws, and that's a big stereotype for Americans too, just gun-bearing Americans.
Oh, I definitely agree. When I went back to India and I was talking to my cousins, they were like, "Oh yeah, like you guys have school shootings all the time," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know." They're like, why don't you just get rid of guns? Like, it seems so simple. I'm like, "Yeah, you'd think, right?" No, no.
Yeah.
But on the broader subject of politics, let's talk about our president Trump. He's literally seen as a joke, a little joke to other countries. Like, most everyone laughs at him, including us, some of us. But to a non-patriot, his actions are especially ridiculous. Not to mention the COVID response he took, or actually the lack thereof, because pretty sure he didn't think it was an actual virus until it started showing major impacts. And because of this lack of belief, he cost thousands of people their lives. And if he just took response earlier, maybe we'd be in school by now. Or maybe the situation would be a lot better than it is.
Maybe people wouldn't be, dead.
Developed nations are appalled at our continued lackluster response to such a serious issue. Like, you see Italy's case be one of the epicenters of corona go up and back down before ours even like reached its peak. Like, it's embarrassing to see how bad it got for a country that preaches security and safety of all of its citizens.
Yeah. And I feel like the fact that Trump has become such like a social media kind of icon is new in this era a little bit. And also that is kind of appalling for a lot of people of other nations. They wouldn't really expect to see like some like reality TV show star and billionaire like end up becoming leader of the country. And yeah, to them, it is kind of like a show. It's like they turn on their TVs that day and they're like, oh, what did Trump do next? I have a lot of family in Europe and in Iran that see the same thing. They're like, it's like a little TV show that they watch from afar. Just, oh, what's this guy going to do next? Like, and I get it. Like, he's literally a joke. So another thing that we just wanted to talk about more in the general sense, less of a political sense, is just how other developed nations just in general view American culture and the culture of America as a whole. Other nations know more about America than America knows about other nations. That's just a simple fact. Many Americans cannot point to countries like South Africa, Iran, or even Vietnam on a map. This kind of like ignorance is a very common theme among how other people view America. Americans are often seen as ignorant also because of their widespread inability to speak any other languages. Many people in this world learn English as a second language, yet are approached as like stupid by Americans when their grammar is a bit off or have an accent. They kind of talk down to people that have an accent, which is a commonality that I've seen across a lot of Americans.
Many German and Dutch people, as we read about, view American tourists as loud, uncouth, badly mannered, or short-sighted when they come visit other countries, which is really embarrassing for us. Like,
much of the world sees America as really dumb This is probably because of what we just talked about before. Americans have such an immense cultural influence, but I can still see why we appear this way to them. You know, a lot of them have said, like, yeah, we get it. You don't know our language because, like, what is the point of you learning, like, Persian? You learning Persian just for fun is not going to do you any good, but a Persian learning English is going to do them a lot of good in their
Yep.
development and stuff like that. But yeah, there is still this lingering sense of just what we said before, this kind of ignorance, this kind of self-centeredness, where we think that like the world revolves around this thing called America, I guess.
For sure. And honestly, like if we point out specific American stereotypes, we can see that people think that we eat a lot of burgers. We're literally a country full of obese people. TV dinners, massive shopping malls. We're really materialistic, patriotic, capitalist. We love our guns, imperialist, but we also have the freedom of thought and religion, which is like some of the first things they think of when they think of America.
Yeah. And you know, it's easy for us to point out all the bad. As personally, I don't remember the struggles of living in Iran as a young child. I only remember the joy of it. I also understand how, for many, life in America is an immeasurable upgrade from what they've had before. I completely see and understand that. However, I also refuse to uphold this overly idealistic notion about how good and moral and perfect and like godly of a power it really is. There are so many injustices that occur in their own right and are still rampant in this country. And there are still many problems to still be addressed. You know, it although America has become like the beacon or the icon of like freedom in the world, that doesn't actually mean that it's the most democratic or the most free or the most equal at all. We're actually considered a quote flawed democracy with a score of 7 to 8 on a scale of 10 by the Economist Intelligence Unit, which is a very highly regarded quantitative political science database, behind countries such as Spain, France, the UK, Portugal, Australia, Canada, Chile, New Zealand, Uruguay, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Switzerland. Like, we are considered less democratic, less ruled by the people than all of these countries. We're just simply that. We're not the freest country. We're not the most democratic. We're certainly not the safest, or we don't have the most race neutral policies. Like, we're just not really number one at much of anything.
That was our discussion on how other countries view America, but now we're going to move on to the social news of the week. And I think this is something that many of you guys may have heard about, but in case you haven't, Kyle Rittenhouse, who is a 17-year-old Wisconsin native, shot and killed 2 protesters at a Black Lives Matter movement while also injuring a third. He is faced with 1 count of homicide as well as a count for carrying a loaded rifle, as the carrying age in Wisconsin is 18. His lawyer, John Pierce, has issued a statement saying that what he did was purely self-defense and that he's a law-abiding patriotic citizen. Many media headlines have not been shy to show him cleaning up graffiti in his local school, thinking that it's comparable or even something that makes up for the fact that he killed 2 protesters and even shot a third one. This has been closely related to the Jacob Blake case, and where Jacob Blake, a black male, was shot 7 times in the back by another Kenosha police officer.
You were also telling me about something that happened when he walked past a police officer, which I thought was crazy. Can you just tell us about that?
Oh yeah, so he literally walked past a police officer, crossed state lines, and went back home. And the police officer even saw that there was a gun in his man, as his official statement says, but they didn't really care to stop him, which I think is so crazy how he went home, got a good night's sleep, and turned himself in before he was actually faced with any consequences, which would definitely not be the case for like any other race.
Especially a black person.
Yes.
This is just ridiculous. Like, there are black people getting killed for showering in their homes, and then there are white killers walking around that have to turn themselves in order to be charged for homicide.
Yeah.
I just need you to sit there and think about that for a little bit,
Like,
while you go sign petitions and donate to the Black Lives Matter movement that we will have linked in the description.
if this doesn't boil your blood, I really don't know what would, because this literally, like, sitting here makes me so angry, because it's the fact that they get away with it all the time. How his lawyer almost has a solid case because he said that Kyle Rittenhouse is a law-abiding patriotic citizen, when it's literally on video he killed people, and they're he's trying to argue that it wasn't him. Like, how do you even come up with these arguments and have them stand in court? Like, it was clearly him. I don't know.
Yep.
It makes me angry.
So, in another case of American exceptionalism, that is our social news of the week. Thank you so much for listening to our episode this week about how other countries view America. If there's anything that you would like to add, make sure to DM us, where we will feature you in an upcoming episode. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at FirstGenFailures. Listen to our podcast on any platform. We're available on all of them: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to podcasts to, we're there. If you don't listen to podcasts on a podcast streaming platform, we're also available on YouTube if you just search up First Gen Failures Podcast. And yeah, I think that's it for this week. So thank you so much for listening.
Bye. We'll see you next Friday.